Muhammad Ali Jinnah and the History of India versus Pakistan documentary. Hello, my name is William, and today we're going to explore this incredible story. Let us know in the comments where you're from, and if you have any suggestions for a title for our channel. Don't forget to subscribe and help us reach 1,000 subscribers. Birth and early life, 1876-1892. Muhammad Ali Jinnah was born on December 25, 1876, in Karachi, a coastal city that was part of British India at the time, now within modern-day Pakistan. Karachi in the late 19th century was a thriving port, connecting trade routes from the Arabian Sea to the British Empire, bustling with merchants, sailors, traders, and immigrants. Its streets were alive with a mixture of languages: Gujarati, Sindhi, Balochi, English, and the sense of spices, textiles, and fresh catch from the sea. For an American reader, imagine Karachi then as a combination of a busy Gulf Coast port like New Orleans and a rising trade hub similar to San Francisco during the gold rush, brimming with opportunity and tension. Jinnah was born into a well-to-do family of Gujarati merchants. His father, Jinnah Bhai Punja, was a respected member of the Khoja Muslim community, known for its trading acumen. His mother, Mithibai, was a deeply religious woman, part of a household where Islamic practices and community traditions were essential. The Khoja Muslims, originally from Gujarat, were part of the Ismaili Shia branch, led spiritually by the Aga Khan. This group balanced faith with commerce, successfully navigating the British colonial economy. Jinnah was the eldest of 7 siblings, which placed early responsibilities on his shoulders. The family's home, while comfortable by local standards, was not opulent. British colonial control influenced daily life, from legal systems to trade policies, shaping the world young Jinnah would grow up in. He attended Sindh Madrasat-ul-Islam, a Muslim religious school, where he learned Arabic, Persian, and the Quran. However, his parents also valued modern, Western education. To that end, Jinnah was enrolled in the Christian Missionary Society high school, where he was introduced to the English language and Western ideas, including British law and governance. This dual exposure to both Eastern traditions and Western systems laid the foundation for the complex figure Jinnah would become. By the early 1890s, Karachi's cosmopolitan character exposed Jinnah to many communities and cultures: Hindus, Parsis, Jews, British officials, and Muslim traders. The city's rapid economic expansion mirrored broader changes happening across British India, with railroads, telegraphs, and steamships reshaping commerce and communication. Jinnah, as a teenager, was restless and ambitious, already showing signs of a sharp mind and keen observation of his surroundings. He was not destined to remain confined to Karachi. The world awaited him. In 1892, at the age of 16, Jinnah was sent to London. His father had arranged for him to apprentice in a business firm, hoping that Muhammad Ali would follow in the family's mercantile footsteps. However, what was intended as a business training opportunity would soon turn into something else entirely, setting Jinnah on a path that would change history. 2. Teenage years and education abroad, 1892-1896. In 1892, Muhammad Ali Jinnah arrived in London, one of the world's most influential and dynamic capitals. For an American imagining this era, think of London as the New York City of its time. A global hub where politics, finance, culture, and empire intertwined. London in the late Victorian era was at its peak, with Queen Victoria reigning over a vast colonial empire, including India. Skyscrapers hadn't yet dotted the skyline, but the city pulsed with ambition, innovation, and imperial pride. Originally, Jinnah was meant to work in the business offices of Graham's Shipping and Trading Company, arranged by his father to prepare him for the family trade. But the young Jinnah soon realized his interests lay elsewhere. London exposed him to ideas he had never encountered in Karachi: constitutionalism, individual rights, parliamentary democracy, and the British legal tradition. These influences sparked a passion for law, a field that combined intellect, debate, and the potential for political impact. Determined, Jinnah enrolled at Lincoln's Inn, one of the 4 ancient inns of court, to study law. Lincoln's Inn, with its majestic halls and centuries-old traditions, trained some of the most brilliant legal minds in the British Empire. At the time, colonial subjects like Jinnah were rare but not unprecedented. The British legal system, while exclusionary, provided a formal path for Indian elites to rise in status. For context, in U.S. terms, this was like a bright student from a small American town landing at Harvard or Yale Law School. A leap into a world of privilege and influence. London society shaped Jinnah's worldview. He was captivated by the workings of British parliamentary debates, the respect for constitutional procedure, and the idea of law as the bedrock of civilized society. He became acquainted with early Indian nationalist circles in London where Indian students, intellectuals, and political activists gathered to debate colonial rule, representation, and the future of India. Figures like Dadabhai Naoroji, the first Indian elected to the British Parliament, left an impression on Jinnah, showing that Indian voices could challenge imperial authority through legal and political means. Jinnah's years in London also reflected the personal transformation of a teenager into a young adult. He shed some of his traditionalist upbringing, adopting Western dress, manners, and tastes. He enjoyed the arts, attending the theater and opera, and developed a lifelong love for Shakespeare. By age 19, Jinnah completed his legal training and passed the bar, a significant achievement in itself. But rather than staying in London, where opportunities existed, he chose to return to India. His ambition was no longer confined to commerce. He now dreamed of building a distinguished career in law and eventually politics back home. 3. Early legal career in Bombay, 1896-1910. Returning to India in 1896, Muhammad Ali Jinnah chose Bombay, now Mumbai, as the stage for his professional rise. Bombay was British India's most cosmopolitan city, often compared to New York City in its diversity and energy. It was a booming port, a center for trade, finance, and industry, with communities from across the subcontinent, Hindus, Muslims, Parsis, Jews, and British expatriates, all packed into its teeming streets. The British legal system dominated the city's courts, making Bombay the perfect place for a sharp, English-trained lawyer to shine. Jinnah quickly established himself in the legal profession. His command of the English language, refined accent, and sharp intellect set him apart from many contemporaries. He was known for his precise arguments, cool demeanor, and respect for courtroom procedures. Unlike more flamboyant lawyers, Jinnah's strength lay in his meticulous preparation and logical clarity. In the eyes of British judges, he was seen as someone who understood their legal culture, an advantage that gave him influence in high-profile cases. For an American comparison, imagine a young, brilliant attorney returning from Harvard Law to Manhattan, stepping confidently into the bustling world of Wall Street law firms and federal courts. Jinnah's early legal mentors included Sir Ferozeshah Mehta, a towering figure in both law and politics. Under Mehta, Jinnah learned not just courtroom craft, but also how the legal system intertwined with broader social and political issues. Bombay's legal world wasn't limited to dry contracts. It touched on issues of labor rights, communal tensions, business disputes, and political freedoms. Jinnah also became involved in civic organizations, reflecting his interest in public life and reform. During this period, Jinnah's personal life saw both joy and tragedy. He married Amibai Jinnah, a young woman from his community, but the marriage was short-lived. Amibai died just a few years later, leaving Jinnah a widower at a young age. He buried his grief in work, focusing on building his reputation and wealth. By the early 1900s, Jinnah had become one of Bombay's most respected and successful lawyers, a man whose professional success allowed him access to the city's elite circles. Jinnah's sharp legal mind, however, could not be confined to private practice forever. Like many successful attorneys in American history, think of figures like Abraham Lincoln or Thurgood Marshall, Jinnah was increasingly drawn to the political arena, where he believed the skills of persuasion, negotiation, and law could
shape the destiny of his people. This was the moment when Muhammad Ali Jinnah began transitioning from a lawyer of great promise to a political figure of national significance.
The entry into politics and Indian National Congress, 1906 to 1920. By 1906, Muhammad Ali Jinnah's transition from a prominent lawyer to an influential political figure was well underway. That year, he formally joined the Indian National Congress, the leading political organization advocating for greater Indian self-rule under British colonial rule. At this time, the Congress was still dominated by moderate leaders who sought gradual reform through legal and constitutional means, rather than mass protests or revolutionary tactics. Jinnah, with his deep respect for law, order, and constitutionalism, fit perfectly among the moderates. He believed that Indians could secure political rights and representation within the British Empire through careful negotiation, legal argument, and political advocacy, not through defiance or civil disobedience. For an American comparison, think of Jinnah as similar to the early American founding figures who initially sought to negotiate fairer treatment within the British system before independence became inevitable. During this period, Jinnah's most famous political reputation was forged. He became known as the ambassador of Hindu-Muslim unity. Unlike many politicians of his time, Jinnah placed immense importance on building bridges between India's Hindu majority and Muslim minority, believing that only a united front could compel the British to grant meaningful political concessions. He worked closely with key Congress leaders, such as Bal Gangadhar Tilak, a fiery nationalist, and Annie Besant, an Irish-British activist who became a prominent voice for Indian self-rule. Jinnah's political skill was most evident during the Lucknow Pact of 1916, an agreement between the Indian National Congress and the All India Muslim League, the organization representing Muslim political interests. The pact marked a rare moment of cooperation between the two communities, agreeing on demands for greater autonomy and representation under British rule. Jinnah's role in bringing these groups together was widely praised, and he emerged as a respected leader across communal lines. Throughout this phase, Jinnah participated in key debates about constitutional reforms proposed by the British government, particularly around the issues of minority rights, representation in legislative bodies, and the limits of colonial authority. He consistently advocated for political moderation, believing that India's best path forward lay in working within the system, not breaking it down. However, tensions were rising within the Congress movement, particularly over the approach of Mohandas K. Gandhi. Gandhi's rise to prominence after World War I brought new energy to the independence struggle, centered on mass mobilization, nonviolent protest, and civil disobedience. Jinnah, ever the constitutionalist, was deeply skeptical of Gandhi's methods, viewing them as reckless and likely to lead to chaos. For Jinnah, the law was a safeguard, not an obstacle. To abandon legal frameworks was to court disaster. By the end of this period, Jinnah's frustrations with the Congress leadership were mounting. His disagreements with Gandhi and other radical elements would set the stage for a major shift in his political life, moving him away from the Congress Party and toward a renewed focus on Muslim political identity. 5. Shift in political views and growing disillusionment, 1920-1930. The 1920s marked a critical turning point in Muhammad Ali Jinnah's political journey, a decade defined by growing disillusionment, personal tragedy, and a deepening divide between India's two major religious communities. At the heart of this shift was Jinnah's increasing disagreement with Gandhi's leadership of the Indian National Congress. Gandhi's mass non-cooperation movement, which called on Indians to boycott British institutions and resist colonial rule through peaceful defiance, clashed fundamentally with Jinnah's belief in constitutional methods. Jinnah viewed the non-cooperation strategy as dangerous and chaotic. As a lawyer trained in the British system, he valued the rule of law, orderly negotiations, and gradual reform. he feared that mass agitation would lead to violence and communal tensions, destabilizing the very society that nationalists sought to liberate. In a sense, Jinnah was caught between two worlds: the constitutional politics of the British system and the rising popular demands for radical change championed by Gandhi. By the early 1920s, Jinnah withdrew from the Congress Party, disappointed by its turn toward mass mobilization and its perceived neglect of Muslim political concerns. Instead, he began re-engaging with the All India Muslim League, though this was a slow process. At the time, the League was still a relatively weak political organization, lacking the mass following or national influence of the Congress. Jinnah himself stepped back from frontline politics for a period, focusing on his legal career and spending time in England. Jinnah's personal life during this decade was marked by both hope and heartbreak. In 1918, he married Ratanbai Rati Petit, the glamorous, spirited daughter of a wealthy Parsi industrialist family. The marriage caused a scandal. Rati was only 18, and her conversion to Islam created rifts with her family and Bombay's Parsi elite. Despite the odds, the couple shared a passionate bond, and Rati became a beloved figure in Jinnah's social circle. However, the marriage was troubled. Jinnah's intense work habits, political frustrations, and emotional distance strained their relationship. Tragically, Rati's health deteriorated, and she died in 1929 at the young age of 29, leaving Jinnah devastated. Her death marked one of the darkest periods in his life, leaving him personally isolated even as political turmoil raged across India. Some historians suggest that Rati's loss hardened Jinnah emotionally, making him more aloof, reserved, and determined in his later political battles. Meanwhile, India's political climate was shifting. Communal tensions between Hindus and Muslims were rising, fueled by economic competition, religious disputes, and political rivalries. Jinnah, once the ambassador of Hindu-Muslim unity, watched with dismay as the fragile alliances of the past unraveled. His growing realization that Muslim political identity needed stronger institutional defense would shape his return to politics in the next decade, a return that would ultimately redefine the subcontinent's future. 6. Return to Indian politics and reorganization of Muslim League, 1934-1939. By the early 1930s, Muhammad Ali Jinnah had effectively withdrawn from Indian politics, dividing his time between England and legal work. However, by 1934, amid growing communal tensions and political shifts in India, Jinnah was persuaded to return. Muslim leaders, worried about the All India Muslim League's decline and the increasing dominance of the Indian National Congress, turned to Jinnah, recognizing his legal brilliance, political acumen, and reputation as a national figure. When Jinnah came back to India, he found a Muslim League in disarray, fragmented, lacking popular support, and overshadowed by both Congress and regional Muslim political factions. His immediate challenge was to rebuild the League into a cohesive, influential political force. Drawing on his deep understanding of law, negotiation, and organization, Jinnah set about reorganizing the League's structure, broadening its membership, and transforming it into a mass political party capable of representing Muslim interests nationwide. This period marked the emergence of Jinnah's reputation as a strategic and pragmatic leader. He navigated intense rivalries within Muslim politics, skillfully sidelining or reconciling with competing Muslim leaders. At the same time, he negotiated with the British colonial authorities, pressing for Muslim political rights and safeguards, while also confronting the Congress, which claimed to speak for all Indians, but was seen by many Muslims as dominated by Hindu leadership and interests. One of the key challenges Jinnah faced was defining the Muslim League's political identity. Previously, the League had functioned largely as a protector of Muslim elites' interests, focusing on petitions, delegations, and limited political engagement. Jinnah's vision was broader. He sought to position the League as the principal voice of India's Muslims, addressing not only elite concerns but also the anxieties of the middle classes, professionals, and even rural populations. American audiences might recognize Jinnah's strategic repositioning as somewhat analogous, to the way U.S. political parties reinvent themselves in moments of crisis, broadening their base to appeal to new constituencies. Jinnah understood that without mass support, the League would be powerless in the coming constitutional battles over India's future. Throughout the late 1930s, Jinnah's sharp legal mind and disciplined approach helped the League score important political victories. He skillfully negotiated with the British during key constitutional discussions, ensuring that Muslim political demands were not ignored. At the same time, he worked to articulate a clearer Muslim political identity, emphasizing the distinct cultural, religious, and historical experience of India's Muslims. This evolving identity, however, was still framed within the idea of a united India. At this stage, Jinnah was not yet publicly calling for the creation of a separate Muslim state. By the eve of World War II, Jinnah had successfully transformed the Muslim League from a marginal group into a national political force. His re-emergence on the political stage set the scene for the dramatic shifts of the 1940s, when the idea of partition would come to dominate the conversation about India's future. 7. Lahore Resolution and the idea of Pakistan, 1940-1945. The 1940s were the most pivotal years in Muhammad Ali Jinnah's political career, the years when his leadership crystallized into a clear vision, and the idea of Pakistan took center stage. The decisive moment came in March 1940, at the annual meeting of the All India Muslim League in Lahore. Here, under Jinnah's guidance, the League passed the Lahore Resolution, which called for the creation of independent states in Muslim majority regions of British India. This resolution, later known as the Pakistan Resolution, fundamentally altered the political landscape. For the first time, the Muslim League officially demanded the separation of Muslim-majority areas from Hindu-majority India. While the resolution's language was initially vague, referring to multiple independent states, it quickly became clear that Jinnah was envisioning a single nation, Pakistan. Jinnah's speeches and writings from this period reflected his growing conviction that Hindus and Muslims constituted two distinct nations. Known as the two-nation theory, this idea argued that the religious, cultural, and social differences between Muslims and Hindus were so profound that coexistence within a single political framework would inevitably lead to conflict and Muslim marginalization. Jinnah presented Pakistan not as a rejection of India, but as a necessary safeguard for the survival, dignity, and political rights of Muslims. For American audiences, this ideological shift might recall moments in U.S. history when cultural or political groups, feeling marginalized or excluded, pushed for separate institutions or movements, though of course the context in colonial India was unique, shaped by centuries of empire, religious divisions, and the complicated legacy of British rule. The British response to the Lahore Resolution was cautious but attentive. As World War II raged in Europe and Asia, the British government was desperate to maintain stability in India, which provided critical military and economic resources to the Allied war effort. British officials engaged in delicate balancing acts, trying to satisfy both Congress and the Muslim League, even as tensions between the two escalated. Jinnah, meanwhile, emerged as the undisputed leader of India's Muslims. His mastery of political negotiation, careful public messaging, and ability to unify disparate Muslim factions consolidated his authority. He was no longer simply a constitutional lawyer or opposition figure. He was now the Quaid-e-Azam, great leader, a title given to him by his supporters and one that underscored his central role in shaping the destiny of millions. The global context of World War II also influenced the independence movement. As Britain weakened under the strain of war, Indian political leaders sensed that the colonial grip was loosening. However, rather than uniting around a common national struggle, India's communities became increasingly divided, with the Congress pressing for immediate independence and the Muslim League insisting on Muslim rights and eventual partition. Jinnah's political strategy during these years was characterized by patience, legal precision, and relentless focus. He resisted premature compromises, confident that the Muslim League's bargaining power would only grow as Britain's position weakened. By the mid-1940s, Jinnah's vision of Pakistan had become not just a political demand, but a powerful rallying cry for millions of Muslims across British India. 8. Negotiations, cabinet mission, and partition talks, 1945–1947. As World War II drew to a close in 1945, the British Empire was exhausted. The United Kingdom had suffered immense human and financial losses, and it was clear that its hold over India was nearing an end. With Britain eager to negotiate a withdrawal, Indian political leaders saw an opportunity to shape the subcontinent's future, but the path ahead was riddled with deepening divisions, particularly between the Indian National Congress and the Muslim League. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, now firmly established as the voice of India's Muslims, played a decisive role in these high-stakes negotiations. The cabinet mission of 1946, sent from Britain to India, sought to find a compromise between the Congress and the Muslim League. Their goal was to establish a united India, with safeguards for minority groups, proposing a federal structure that would allow provinces significant autonomy. Jinnah initially showed interest in the cabinet mission plan because it offered Muslim majority provinces a level of autonomy short of full independence, but better than outright domination by a Hindu majority center. For a brief moment, there was hope that partition might be avoided. However, deep mistrust between the League and Congress derailed the agreement. Congress leaders, particularly Jawaharlal Nehru, emphasized a strong central government, while Jinnah insisted that Muslim provinces must have the right to self-governance, free from central interference. At the Simla Conference in 1945, Jinnah's hardened stance became more visible. He now argued that the only viable solution was the partition of India into two sovereign nations, one for Hindus, one for Muslims. This position was not born solely out of religious ideology, but from Jinnah's increasing conviction that Muslims would never receive fair treatment within a united India dominated by Congress. He believed partition was the only safeguard against what he saw as inevitable political marginalization. American audiences may draw parallels here to the ways national identities hardened in Europe after World War I, when multi-ethnic empires like Austria-Hungary fragmented into separate nation-states. Similarly, the post-war climate in India saw rising communalism, where political identities were increasingly tied to religious and cultural divisions. The negotiations of the late 1940s were shaped by the powerful personalities involved. Gandhi, the moral voice of nonviolence and unity; Nehru, the charismatic modernizer; Mountbatten, the last British viceroy tasked with managing Britain's exit; and Jinnah, the relentless advocate for Muslim political sovereignty. Despite countless meetings, proposals, and last-minute efforts, the gap between Congress and the Muslim League widened. Communal violence erupted across India, especially in provinces like Bengal and Punjab, fueling urgency. Bloody riots between Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs escalated, creating a climate where partition, once unthinkable, began to seem inevitable. British officials, desperate to avoid total collapse, accelerated the timeline for independence. Jinnah's political strategy during this period was marked by a mix of legal argument, public persuasion, and hard bargaining. He refused to settle for symbolic concessions, insisting that Muslim-majority provinces must control their own destiny. By the summer of 1947, partition was no longer a political demand. It had become a political reality. 9. Partition of India and creation of Pakistan, 1947. On August 14, 1947, the Indian subcontinent was divided into two independent nations, India and Pakistan. The momentous decision to partition British India was the culmination of years of political struggle, negotiations, and growing religious and political divisions. It marked the end of British colonial rule, but also set in motion one of the most painful and traumatic events in modern history. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, now the central figure in the creation of Pakistan, had achieved his goal of an independent, Muslim-majority state. Yet the joy of independence was overshadowed by the violence, displacement, and bloodshed that accompanied the division. The partition was not a smooth process. It was a rushed and chaotic affair, with millions of people uprooted from their homes as borders were drawn in haste. Jinnah's dream of Pakistan was realized, but the country was born in the midst of chaos. The idea of partition had been discussed for years, but its implementation was a product of escalating communal tensions, rising violence, and the deadlock between the Congress and the Muslim League. For Jinnah, partition was the only viable solution, a safeguard for Muslims in the face of Hindu-majority rule. The creation of Pakistan, he believed, would ensure that Muslims would have their own nation, where they could safeguard their rights, their culture, and their political identity. However, the human cost of partition was staggering. As the boundaries between India and Pakistan were drawn, they split families, communities, and centuries-old ties. The Punjab region, in particular, became the focal point of violence and chaos. Hindus and Sikhs in Pakistan fled to India, while Muslims in India fled to Pakistan. The mass migration was accompanied by widespread violence, with riots, massacres, and revenge killings becoming tragically common. Over 1 million people are estimated to have died in the violence, and millions more were displaced, many losing their homes and their lives in the process. For Jinnah, the toll of partition was deeply personal. While he had achieved his political goal, the human cost weighed heavily on him. His calls for peaceful coexistence between Muslims, Hindus, and Sikhs within Pakistan often went unheard in the frenzy of violence. His vision of a unified Pakistan, where minorities would be protected and respected, was in stark contrast to the reality of the bloodshed and hatred that consumed much of the subcontinent. Jinnah's leadership was further tested in the aftermath of partition. As Pakistan's new leader, he faced the monumental task of shaping a new nation from the wreckage of colonialism, religious conflict, and political division. Pakistan's infrastructure was shattered, and millions of refugees needed to be housed and resettled. The country faced immense challenges in its early days, both in terms of governance and in dealing with the mass trauma caused by partition. Despite these challenges, Jinnah's resolve did not waver. He remained focused on the future of Pakistan, often working late into the night to address the country's myriad issues. Even as communal violence raged in parts of Pakistan, Jinnah made a public appeal for unity, urging Pakistanis to work together regardless of their religious backgrounds. His famous speech to Pakistan's Constituent Assembly on August 11, 1947, emphasized his vision of a secular Pakistan that would ensure equal rights for all citizens, regardless of religion. He famously stated, "You are free. You are free to go to your temples. You are free to go to your mosques or to any other place of worship in this state of Pakistan. You may belong to any religion, caste, or creed that has nothing to do with the business of the state." However, the reality on the ground was far more complicated. The legacy of partition and the deep divisions between Hindus and Muslims continued to haunt the fledgling nation of Pakistan. As India and Pakistan began their uneasy coexistence, both countries faced a long road ahead filled with economic challenges, social unrest, and the question of Kashmir. Jinnah's health, already fragile due to his battle with tuberculosis, deteriorated rapidly during the first months of Pakistan's existence. Despite his deteriorating condition, he worked tirelessly, giving speeches, making political decisions, and trying to stabilize the country. His vision for Pakistan was clear: a modern, democratic, and inclusive state where religious minorities were respected and where Pakistan could stand as a strong, independent nation. In the weeks following independence, Jinnah's health worsened, and it became evident that he would not live to see the long-term stability of the nation he had helped create. He had achieved his goal of a separate Muslim-majority state, but the future of Pakistan remained uncertain. 10. Leadership as Pakistan's first Governor-General, 1947 to 1948. With the creation of Pakistan in August 1947, Muhammad Ali Jinnah became the country's first Governor-General, a title that made him the symbolic head of state. He was tasked with establishing the foundations of a new nation, one that had emerged from the traumatic events of partition and was filled with uncertainty about its future. His leadership in this critical period would set the tone for Pakistan's early years. Jinnah's vision for Pakistan was complex and multifaceted. He believed that the new nation could be both a democratic state and one that protected the rights of its Muslim population. However, his vision for Pakistan was also controversial, particularly when it came to the role of Islam in the state. While Jinnah was a devout Muslim, he envisioned Pakistan as a state where people of all religions, including Hindus, Christians, and Sikhs, could coexist peacefully. He sought a secular framework for governance, where religion would be separate from politics, a belief that often led to tension within Pakistan's early political discourse. Jinnah's speeches, particularly those delivered shortly after independence, underscored this vision. His speech to the Constituent Assembly of Pakistan on August 11, 1947, remains one of his most famous addresses, where he clearly articulated his commitment to equal rights for all citizens, regardless of their religion. You are free. You are free to go to your temples. You are free to go to your mosques or to any other place of worship in this state of Pakistan. You may belong to any religion, caste, or creed that has nothing to do with the business of the state. Yet, despite these proclamations, the reality of governance proved to be more challenging than Jinnah had anticipated. Pakistan faced severe economic difficulties primarily due to the dislocation caused by partition, which saw millions of people displaced across the new borders. Refugees flooded into Pakistan, especially from India, and the government had to find ways to accommodate them, provide shelter, and offer basic resources. The country's infrastructure was inadequate, and the civil administration was still being developed, creating a sense of instability. Jinnah's relationship with the political elite and military leadership of Pakistan also proved to be a critical element in the early days of the country's existence. Jinnah was a strong leader, but he often found himself at odds with some of his closest colleagues, who had different visions for Pakistan. For example, Liaquat Ali Khan, Pakistan's first prime minister, was a pragmatist who often clashed with Jinnah's idealism, while others in the military and political establishments were eager to see Pakistan become more explicitly Islamic in character. Furthermore, Jinnah's health continued to deteriorate rapidly. He had been suffering from tuberculosis for several years before independence, and the stress of leading a newly formed country compounded his condition. Despite his fragile health, Jinnah continued to work relentlessly, showing an unparalleled determination to build the new nation. However, his declining health ultimately hindered his ability to fully carry out his responsibilities. Throughout 1948, Jinnah's health deteriorated to the point where he was no longer able to perform his duties as Governor General. He began to withdraw from public life, spending more time in private, while his closest aides and political allies began to take on more of the burden of governance. Despite his weakened state, Jinnah remained an iconic figure in Pakistan. He continued to make public appearances, though they became less frequent as his health worsened. His influence over the nation remained profound, as the public saw him as the father of the nation and the symbol of Pakistan's independence. On September 11, 1948, just over a year after Pakistan's creation, Muhammad Ali Jinnah passed away. His death marked the end of an era in Pakistan's history, and the country was left to navigate the complexities of nation-building without its founding leader. Jinnah's death was a moment of profound national mourning, not only in Pakistan, but also across the Muslim world. Despite his relatively short tenure as Pakistan's Governor General, Jinnah's legacy was already firmly established. His vision for Pakistan, based on religious tolerance, equality, and democracy, remained a guiding principle for many of the country's early leaders. However, his death left a void in leadership, and Pakistan struggled to implement the ideals Jinnah had espoused, as the political landscape quickly became dominated by military rule and religious factions. 11. Final days and death, 1948. The final months of Muhammad Ali Jinnah's life were marked by a visible decline in health, though his commitment to Pakistan never faltered. By the end of 1947, it was clear that Jinnah, weakened by his long battle with tuberculosis and the immense stresses of his political role, was no longer physically capable of leading the country in the way he had before. Despite his illness, he continued to work tirelessly, but his deteriorating condition forced him to limit his public appearances and day-to-day involvement in governance. Jinnah's health had been fragile for years, and by 1948, it had reached a critical point. His close aides and medical advisors were aware that the tuberculosis had taken a toll on him, but Jinnah's drive to build the new nation often kept him working long hours. His dedication to Pakistan, and particularly his vision of a peaceful democratic state, was unwavering. Yet, the immense pressure of nation-building, the challenges posed by partition, and the conflict surrounding the creation of the new state all took a heavy toll on his body. During the first year of Pakistan's independence, Jinnah spent a considerable amount of time at his residence in Karachi, receiving medical treatment. But his ability to actively participate in political life grew increasingly limited. His ministers and advisors, particularly Liaquat Ali Khan, took on more responsibilities. Despite this, Jinnah remained a powerful symbol of Pakistan's legitimacy and authority, and his infrequent appearances were still met with great reverence by the public. His health was kept relatively private, and the nation continued to look to him for guidance. His last public appearance took place on August 14, 1948, during Pakistan's first anniversary of independence. He made a brief address, his voice weak, and his appearance frail, but his words still carried the same commanding tone and vision that had guided the creation of the nation. Jinnah's message during this speech emphasized the importance of unity and the need for Pakistanis to stay true to the ideals upon which the country had been founded. Just a few weeks after this speech, Jinnah's condition worsened rapidly. On September 11, 1948, Muhammad Ali Jinnah passed away at the age of 71. His death left Pakistan in a state of profound grief and uncertainty. The country had lost its founding father, a man who had dedicated his life to the creation of Pakistan and who had shaped its destiny in its infancy. In Karachi, the streets were filled with mourners as the news of his death spread across the country. Pakistan went into national mourning, and Jinnah's funeral was attended by thousands of people, including political leaders, military officials, and ordinary citizens. The somber event was a reflection of the deep respect and admiration Pakistanis had for him. In death, Jinnah became a martyr for the nation. His passing marked the end of an era for Pakistan, but his legacy was firmly established. His vision of a united, democratic, and secular Pakistan continued to serve as a guiding principle for many, even as the country's political and social landscape evolved in ways that would sometimes diverge from his original ideals. Jinnah's death left Pakistan with a leadership vacuum that would not be easily filled. His close associates, such as Liaquat Ali Khan, would try to carry on his vision, but the challenges facing Pakistan, especially the ongoing issue of Kashmir, the challenges of economic development, and the tensions between religious factions, proved to be formidable. In many ways, Jinnah's passing highlighted the fragility of the nascent state, as the country grappled with its identity and future without the man who had brought it into existence. Yet, even in death, Jinnah's figure loomed large over Pakistan. He was immortalized as Quaid-e-Azam, great leader, the father of the nation. Statues of him were erected in cities across the country, and his image was emblazoned on banknotes, stamps, and government buildings. Pakistanis regarded him as the symbol of their independence, and his name was invoked in times of crisis and uncertainty. His legacy as a leader who had fought tirelessly for the rights of Muslims and for the creation of a Muslim-majority state became central to Pakistan's national identity. In India, Jinnah's legacy was far more complex. While he was respected as a key figure in the independence struggle, his role in partition and the creation of Pakistan made him a controversial figure. In many ways, Jinnah was seen as the man who had divided the subcontinent, leading to the bloodshed and violence of partition. Nonetheless, his place in history was undeniable. He had been instrumental in the formation of two nations, and his vision for Pakistan continued to influence political discourse in both countries for decades. 12. Posthumous legacy and impact on India-Pakistan relations. Following Muhammad Ali Jinnah's death, his legacy took on a life of its own, becoming deeply entwined with the trajectory of Pakistan's development and its ongoing relations with India. His vision for Pakistan and his role in the creation of the new state left an indelible mark on both nations, shaping the political, cultural, and ideological landscape for decades to come. In Pakistan, Jinnah's legacy was cemented in national identity. Revered as Quaid-e-Azam, or Great Leader, Jinnah became the central figure in the construction of Pakistan's political culture. He was celebrated as the architect of the nation, a leader who had fought relentlessly for the rights of Muslims in the Indian subcontinent, and had achieved the creation of Pakistan as a separate homeland for Muslims. His speeches, especially those emphasizing unity and tolerance, were often cited by political leaders as the foundation of Pakistan's ideals. However, over time, his vision of a secular state with equal rights for all religions began to be interpreted differently, especially as the country evolved in response to religious and political challenges. Jinnah's commitment to a democratic and inclusive Pakistan, where Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, and others could coexist peacefully, gradually, gave way to debates and tensions about the role of Islam in the state. His calls for religious tolerance, as seen in his August 11, 1947 speech, were overshadowed by the rise of more conservative religious factions in the country. By the late 20th and early 21st centuries, Pakistan's political landscape had shifted toward an increasing intertwining of politics and religion, moving away from the secular ideal Jinnah had initially advocated. However, despite these shifts, Jinnah's image remained iconic. His vision, although contested, continued to inform Pakistan's national ethos, and his figure was invoked by both moderate and conservative forces as a symbol of Pakistan's founding. In India, Jinnah's legacy was more complex and contentious. As the leader of the All India Muslim League and the driving force behind the demand for Pakistan, Jinnah was seen by many in India as the figure who had split the subcontinent, leading to the bloody partition and the resulting mass migration, violence, and loss of life. To many Hindus and Sikhs, Jinnah symbolized the divisive forces that had fractured the unity of the Indian subcontinent, and his name became associated with the painful memories of partition. In Indian popular memory, Jinnah's role in the partition was often viewed with suspicion and criticism, as his leadership in demanding a separate Muslim state became one of the most contentious aspects of Indian history. However, Jinnah's reputation in India was not entirely negative. Among Indian Muslims, Jinnah was often seen as a champion of their rights and a defender of their religious and political identity within a predominantly Hindu-majority India. Some also viewed Jinnah as a figure who had stood up to the British Empire, much like Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru, albeit with a different approach. His speeches and writings continued to be studied in India, particularly among scholars interested in understanding the political history of the subcontinent. In more recent decades, some Indian historians and political figures have acknowledged Jinnah's role as a key actor in the history of Indian independence, though his legacy remains tied to the difficult partition narrative. For decades after his death, Jinnah's influence in India-Pakistan relations was significant. The two nations, separated by partition, experienced intermittent periods of conflict, rivalry, and war, beginning with the First Kashmir War in 1947-1948 and continuing through subsequent decades. Jinnah's vision of Pakistan as a separate Muslim state was realized, but the unresolved issues from partition, particularly the Kashmir dispute, continued to fuel animosity between the two nations. The Kashmir conflict, which began shortly after partition, remains one of the most prominent and enduring disputes between India and Pakistan. The territory of Kashmir, claimed by both countries, has led to multiple wars and a long-standing military standoff. For Pakistan, Jinnah's vision of a Muslim-majority state was symbolically connected to the idea of controlling Kashmir, an issue that would define much of Pakistan's foreign policy. On the Indian side, Jinnah's call for a separate Muslim state was often viewed as a betrayal of the vision of a united India, leading to suspicion and hostility between the two nations. Over time, the political and military rivalry between India and Pakistan only deepened. The nuclear arms race, the Kashmir conflict, and cross-border terrorism became defining elements of the relationship, and Jinnah's legacy loomed large in the narrative of Pakistan's identity. Both nations have fought 3 full-scale wars: 1947, 1948, 1965, 1971, and numerous skirmishes and proxy conflicts. Jinnah's vision of a peaceful, democratic state for Muslims was long overshadowed by the realities of ongoing conflict, as Pakistan's military leadership, in particular, played a central role in the country's foreign and security policy. The joint relationship between India and Pakistan also saw periods of détente, most notably in the 1990s when both countries engaged in nuclear tests and initiated a peace process. However, Jinnah's role in partition continued to shape the contours of these negotiations, and the underlying issues of religious and territorial division remained unresolved. The challenge of reconciling the ideals Jinnah set forth with the reality of statecraft, war, and national identity remained a central theme of the ongoing rivalry. Jinnah's legacy also lived on in the minds of Pakistan's leadership. Successive governments and military leaders in Pakistan often invoked his name and vision, particularly during times of crisis or when seeking to justify Pakistan's national identity. His vision for Pakistan as a nation-state for Muslims, regardless of ethnicity or religion, was sometimes interpreted as a justification for policies favoring Muslim identity over the pluralistic vision Jinnah himself had articulated. In the 21st century, debates about Jinnah's legacy have evolved. Some contemporary scholars and political leaders in Pakistan have returned to his speeches and writings, exploring his secular vision and his emphasis on minority rights, while others have argued that his idealism was incompatible with the political realities of a state grappling with religious extremism. In India, Jinnah's legacy continues to be debated in the context of the country's complex relationship with Pakistan and the ongoing struggles over identity, nationalism, and the role of religion in politics. As the years have passed, Jinnah's place in history remains divisive but undeniably significant. His life and political journey highlight the complexities of nation-building, the intersection of religion and politics, and the enduring legacy of colonialism in South Asia. His vision for Pakistan, a state that would protect the rights of Muslims, offer a peaceful coexistence for minorities, and stand as a beacon of independence, remains one of the most ambitious and complex political projects in modern history. 13. Jinnah's portrayal in history and popular culture. Muhammad Ali Jinnah's life and legacy have been the subject of intense scrutiny, interpretation, and debate in both scholarly works and popular culture. The ways in which he has been portrayed reflect the complex nature of his role in history, and these portrayals have evolved over time, adapting to the political and cultural contexts in both India and Pakistan. His image has been shaped not only by historians, but also by filmmakers, writers, and the broader media, with varying degrees of admiration, criticism, and mythologization. In Pakistan, Jinnah's legacy is nearly synonymous with the creation of the nation itself. His portrayal in the country's history has been largely reverential, with many considering him the father of the nation, a title that reflects his central role in the founding of Pakistan. Pakistani textbooks, government publications, and national discourse frequently portray him as the ultimate statesman whose vision and determination brought about the creation of a sovereign Muslim state in the subcontinent.
He is celebrated as the leader who championed the rights of Muslims, fought for their independence, and laid the groundwork for the political and ideological foundations of the new country. His speeches, particularly his address to the Constituent
Assembly of Pakistan on August 11, 1947, in which he emphasized the importance of religious tolerance, equality, and secularism, are often cited as core principles of the Pakistani state. Jinnah's portrayal in Pakistan has been idealized to a degree, with little room for critique or acknowledgement of contradictions in his legacy. His personal life, political decisions, and relationships with other leaders are presented through the lens of his role as a unifying and visionary figure. Over time, however, some scholars and public figures in Pakistan have begun to engage with a more nuanced view of Jinnah. They acknowledge his vision of a secular Pakistan, a concept that has been contested by various political forces in the country. The idealization of Jinnah's secularism has come under scrutiny in the context of Pakistan's growing religious conservatism. In this light, Jinnah's legacy remains a subject of ongoing debate within Pakistan itself, as citizens and scholars wrestle with his vision and the evolving identity of the state. In India, however, Jinnah's portrayal is far more contentious. His role in the partition of India, which led to mass violence and displacement, has made him a polarizing figure. To many Indians, especially Hindus, Jinnah represents the division of the subcontinent and the creation of Pakistan. For those who view the partition as a tragedy that tore apart the Indian subcontinent, Jinnah is often seen as a divisive figure. In the Indian imagination, Jinnah's demand for a separate Muslim state was seen as a break from the vision of a unified, pluralistic India championed by leaders like Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru. Consequently, his image in India has been colored by criticism, with many viewing him as a leader who contributed to the communal discord and division that led to the bloodshed of partition. Nevertheless, Jinnah's figure is not without respect in certain circles within India. Among some Indian Muslims, Jinnah is regarded as a leader who fought for their political and religious rights, particularly at a time when they felt marginalized by the dominant Hindu majority. His vision of Pakistan as a protector of Muslim interests is appreciated by some, even though it led to the painful process of partition. Jinnah's intellectual legacy as a lawyer and statesman is also studied in India, particularly in academic settings, where his legal expertise and political acumen are acknowledged, regardless of his role in the partition. Some Indian intellectuals and historians, particularly those focused on the politics of South Asia in the early 20th century, take a more balanced view of Jinnah, recognizing his significant contribution to the Indian independence movement, while also critiquing his role in the eventual split of the subcontinent. In global history, Jinnah's legacy is increasingly examined as part of the broader narrative of decolonization and the formation of new nations in the aftermath of World War II. His efforts to create a nation for Muslims in the subcontinent are placed within the context of other anti-colonial struggles, such as those led by leaders like Kwame Nkrumah in Ghana, Jawaharlal Nehru in India, and Gamal Abdel Nasser in Egypt. Jinnah's strategies and tactics in negotiating with the British and his role in shaping the political discourse of the subcontinent have led scholars to view him as a key figure in the post-colonial world. Jinnah's portrayal in popular culture has also been shaped by the evolving geopolitical dynamics in South Asia. In both India and Pakistan, filmmakers have depicted Jinnah's life and legacy, though the portrayals are often markedly different in tone and perspective. In Pakistan, Jinnah's character is often portrayed as a larger-than-life figure, embodying the ideals of sacrifice, leadership, and vision. Films such as Jinnah, 1998, directed by Jamil Dilavi, are explicitly designed to celebrate his role in the creation of Pakistan. The movie, starring Christopher Lee as Jinnah, emphasizes his statesmanship, his determination, and his moral integrity, presenting him as the central figure in the formation of the nation. On the other hand, in India, films and media portrayals of Jinnah often reflect the complex and conflicting views about his role in partition. In the 1990 film Gandhi, directed by Richard Attenborough, Jinnah is portrayed as a figure whose decisions led to the breakup of India. The film shows the tragic consequences of partition and the rising communal violence, with Jinnah's character symbolizing the discord that led to the separation of India and Pakistan. While Gandhi does not delve deeply into Jinnah's character, it nonetheless reflects the dominant Indian view of Jinnah as a man who was central to the division of the subcontinent. Television shows, documentaries, and books in both India and Pakistan continue to explore Jinnah's life, offering varying interpretations of his leadership and vision. In Pakistan, his speeches and writings are often analyzed in schools and universities, where he is revered as the founder of the nation. In India, his legacy is discussed more critically as part of the ongoing conversation about the consequences of partition and the broader history of India's struggle for independence. Beyond film and television, Jinnah's legacy has been examined in academic texts, where scholars have taken different approaches to his life and work. In Pakistan, Jinnah has been the subject of numerous biographies, each adding to the growing body of literature that seeks to understand his vision, his motivations, and his political career. In India, scholarly works often focus on the historical and political context of the partition, with Jinnah's role as the leader of the Muslim League often placed at the center of debates about religious and cultural divisions in the subcontinent. Jinnah's place in global history, alongside other leaders of decolonization and independence movements, is also increasingly emphasized in modern scholarship. His role in shaping the political landscape of the Indian subcontinent has been recognized as part of the broader movement against colonial rule, with Jinnah seen as one of the many figures who helped carve out new nations in the aftermath of British imperialism. Jinnah's portrayal in history and popular culture continues to evolve as the political dynamics of South Asia change. His legacy, both in India and Pakistan, remains a source of significant debate, with his contributions to the creation of Pakistan acknowledged. But his role in partition and the ongoing conflict between the two nations still generating controversy. Ultimately, Jinnah remains a central figure in the history of South Asia, whose life and work continue to shape the political and cultural discourse of the region. 14. Reflections on leadership and character. Muhammad Ali Jinnah's life offers a complex and multifaceted study of leadership. His character, actions, and decisions have been scrutinized and interpreted in myriad ways, both in the context of his time and in subsequent years. To understand Jinnah's leadership, it is necessary to examine his personal qualities, his approach to politics, and how these traits influence the trajectory of Indian and Pakistani history. His determination, discipline, charisma, and aloofness were all key aspects of his character that shaped the way he interacted with both allies and rivals, and which ultimately defined his legacy. Determination and discipline. Jinnah's leadership was defined by an extraordinary level of determination. From a young age, he displayed an unwavering resolve to achieve his goals, whether in his legal career or political life. His decision to pursue a career in law, despite family pressures, was an early indication of his focus and discipline. Moving to London at the age of 16 to study law, a decision that was considered bold by his family and peers, exemplifies his commitment to his personal development. Jinnah's work ethic and meticulous attention to detail were evident in his legal practice. His sharp intellect, combined with his disciplined approach, allowed him to gain a reputation as one of the finest barristers in Bombay. Jinnah's determination was not limited to his professional life. It extended to his political endeavors, where his unyielding resolve to secure a separate state for Muslims in the Indian subcontinent became a defining aspect of his character. Despite opposition from many quarters, including some within his own community, Jinnah's determination led him to persist in his political mission. His ability to stay focused on his goal of creating Pakistan, even in the face of immense challenges and personal tragedies, was a testament to his indomitable will. Charisma and political savvy. Jinnah's charisma was another key element of his leadership. He possessed a commanding presence, which made him a compelling figure both in the courtroom and in political circles. His ability to inspire loyalty among his followers was crucial in the establishment of Pakistan. Jinnah's speeches, characterized by their eloquence and precision, resonated deeply with Muslims in India, who saw in him a leader who understood their aspirations and concerns. His ability to articulate the need for a separate Muslim state, using logical arguments and emotional appeals, earned him the support of millions. Beyond his rhetoric, Jinnah's political savvy played a significant role in his success. He was a master of negotiation, capable of navigating the complex web of political alliances and rivalries in both British India and later in Pakistan. His negotiation skills were evident in key events, such as the Lucknow Pact of 1916, the Cabinet Mission Plan of 1946, and his dealings with the British and Indian leaders. His strategic thinking allowed him to position the All India Muslim League as a central player in the Indian independence movement, eventually leading to the creation of Pakistan. His ability to maintain a delicate balance between appeasing different factions within the Muslim community and engaging with the British Empire made him an astute political operator. Aloofness and isolation. One of the more controversial aspects of Jinnah's character was his aloofness. He was often described as distant and somewhat cold, particularly in his later years. Jinnah's personality, particularly his reserve, made it difficult for many to fully understand him. While he commanded respect and admiration, he did not cultivate personal relationships easily. This aloofness extended to his family life, especially after the death of his wife, Ratanbai Rati Petit, in 1929. Jinnah became increasingly withdrawn and focused on his work, retreating from personal connections. This personal isolation may have contributed to his reputation as a stern and unapproachable leader. It is possible that his focus on his political mission, often at the expense of personal relationships, allowed him to avoid distractions, but it also alienated him from those closest to him. Despite this, his aloofness did not diminish his status as a powerful political figure. In fact, it may have enhanced his mystique and the perception of him as a leader of unquestionable resolve and authority. Jinnah's aloofness, coupled with his intellectual and strategic brilliance, contributed to his image as a man who was above the petty politics of his time, focused solely on the greater cause of securing a separate homeland for Muslims. Legalistic mindset and precision. In political negotiations, Jinnah's background as a lawyer had a profound impact on his approach to politics. His legalistic mindset shaped the way he engaged in political negotiations and crafted his arguments. Jinnah was known for his precision in language, his careful drafting of documents, and his methodical approach to problem solving. His speeches were often carefully structured, with every word chosen for its impact. This attention to detail and insistence on clarity and rationality were reflected in his political strategies. One of the most striking examples of Jinnah's legal approach to politics was his formulation of the two-nation theory, which posited that Muslims and Hindus were distinct nations with their own customs, religion, and culture, and thus could not coexist within a single nation. This theory formed the basis for the creation of Pakistan. Jinnah's ability to present his case in such clear, rational terms was a testament to his legal training. His legalistic approach also helped him navigate the complex negotiations with the British, Congress, and the Muslim League, where clarity and firmness were essential. Relationship with colleagues, rivals, and the British. Jinnah's relationships with colleagues, rivals, and the British were instrumental in shaping his political career. With colleagues, he was often distant, demanding, and uncompromising. Yet, he had the ability to inspire loyalty in those who shared his vision. His association with the Muslim League was built on his ability to present himself as a leader who could unite Muslims across India in pursuit of their political goals. However, within the League itself, there were rival factions, and Jinnah had to navigate these rivalries carefully to maintain control. Jinnah's relationship with the British was equally complex. Early in his career, he was a strong advocate for constitutional reforms and cooperation with the British government. However, as he became increasingly disillusioned with British policies and the Congress Party's approach to independence, he began to adopt a more confrontational stance. His negotiations with the British, particularly regarding the partition of India, revealed his skill in dealing with imperial powers. His political acumen and his ability to hold firm in the face of opposition made him a formidable figure. Influence of personal tragedies on his public life. Jinnah's personal life was marked by significant tragedies, which had a profound impact on his character and leadership style. The death of his beloved wife, Ruti, in 1929, left Jinnah emotionally shattered. Ruti's death, coming at a time when Jinnah was already facing political challenges, marked a turning point in his life. He became more reclusive and focused even more intently on his political goals. The personal pain Jinnah experienced seemed to further fuel his determination to create Pakistan, perhaps as a way to cope with his grief and loneliness. Jinnah's isolation in the face of personal loss is often seen as a reflection of his commitment to his mission. While his personal suffering may have contributed to his aloofness, it also seemed to drive him to greater political action. His leadership in the years following Ruti's death, including his role in negotiating the partition of India, was marked by a sense of urgency and purpose that was partly rooted in his personal struggles. Continuing relevance of his political ideas in modern South Asia. Jinnah's political ideas, particularly his vision for Pakistan, continue to be relevant in the contemporary political landscape of South Asia. His concept of a separate Muslim state in the subcontinent has been revisited in the context of modern-day political debates surrounding religious identity, secularism, and nationalism. In Pakistan, Jinnah's speeches advocating for a pluralistic society where religious minorities are protected continue to be cited by those who seek to promote tolerance and inclusivity. However, his vision of a secular Pakistan has also been challenged by political movements that seek to establish an Islamic state. In India, Jinnah's legacy is also examined in the context of the ongoing debate about religious identity and the role of minority groups within a secular democracy. His role in partition, which remains a point of contention between India and Pakistan, has been revisited in light of current tensions and the enduring conflict over Kashmir. Jinnah's political strategies and his emphasis on Muslim rights in a diverse society continue to resonate, even as the political dynamics of the region evolve. As South Asia moves further into the 21st century, Jinnah's legacy remains a powerful symbol of the region's complex history of colonialism, independence, and partition. His leadership, character, and vision for the future of Muslims in the subcontinent continue to be studied and debated, ensuring that his place in the annals of history remains significant.